All right, welcome to Class 9, Video 9. We are looking at cleaning up data, removing duplicates, that kind of work. A very common task, often needed in Excel, especially because things can be manually overridden. And so let's talk about first removing duplicates. This is a great utility that Excel provides in a number of different ways. First, it has sort of an automatic option. Also, there's some highlighting ways that we can just kind of see duplicates, as well as some formulas that allow us to inform where there are duplicates in our data. We're going to look at all those different examples. The steps for removing duplicates are easy. In the Data tab, there is a button for removing duplicates, so we'll look at that as an example. And in our data, we're going to have to think a little bit about what does a duplicate mean. And so you're getting a little bit further in this concept of using Excel as a tool for analytics in healthcare. So I'm going to start trying to prompt more thinking. Instead of just doing the action, think about what we're doing, because it is easy to learn how to remove duplicates, but you have to be able to think about what duplicates mean in your scenario. So, real scenario, data contains some repeat patient records, but this is data that might have some duplicates that are reasonable. So we're going to take a couple of opportunities to look at different ways of looking for duplicates. The first one is a very visual approach, and that is using conditional formatting. And so we're going to start by taking a look at all of these patient names and highlighting them. It is right here on the Home tab in the Styles section. It's called Conditional Formatting. And so in that button, one of the choices under the Highlight Cells rules is Duplicate Values. And sure enough, you see red around our patients that are the same. So we've got Sally Shaw here twice. This is 80-year-old male, both times, same blood type, same medical condition, but we already have a hint here that this is different. We've got one record on 7/10 and one on 10/19. Now that is completely appropriate. We are looking at a record that has a date of admission and a date of discharge, and hospitals do serve the same patient more than once. So that's the example here of having to think through our data. This would not actually be a duplicate. Yes, it is two listings for the same patient, but each record here represents an individual encounter or stay or time that we served the patient. So that's not actually the duplicate. So that is using the conditional formatting in order to inform on duplicates. Somewhat simple, but it's nice and very visual. So when your use case fits to this, where one column helps tell you your duplicate, it can be really helpful. But let's go ahead and look at some others. Let's look for it with a formula. We can use the COUNTIFs formula in order to evaluate more than one criteria. So I'm pushing this more than one criteria because you can see in our data that we actually have two things that would make this a duplicate. We may have a patient that has an entry here on a different date, but the patient is the same and it's a completely legitimate record. So we only would consider this a duplicate if there is a patient that has an admission on the same day. That would be a sign that this could be a duplicate record. Now, it's not impossible for a patient to be admitted twice on the same day, but it's extraordinarily unlikely. So we're going to take a look at an equation that can help us out here that I use commonly, and it is the COUNTIFs equation. So it is the COUNTIF formula. I keep saying equation. I think you refer to these though as functions. I say formula, I say equation. Forgive me. It's a function. And so the COUNTIFs function can take as many criteria as you would like to give it. And so the two items that it takes for these criteria is what is the range you want to look up this value, and what is the value that you're looking up. And then after you move from that one, it goes into what's the second criteria range 2. What is the second criteria that would match? You want to count if that's the case. So you're going to see here how we can use this in order to check when we have both the name and the admission date in this data set. So this is a COUNTIF, and the range where it's going to count is in the name range. When that range matches to this record, it would count. But also, the secondary condition that needs to be met is that the admission matches to this record. So we enter that, and we see that for Tiffany Ramirez, we only have this one record that has that same name and admission date. Now we would expect to see 2s down here, for example, for Sally Shaw. And so we see Sally Shaw counted as twice, but why would that be? That is actually because I've planted, I happen to know this, an error down here. I have Sally Shaw in here a second time, and maybe it will be easiest to see if we go ahead and sort by name. We'll go Z to A so that Sally comes up top. And you see we have 3 records. However, there are 2 for this record on the 10th. And so this is a actual duplicate record that we would want to get rid of, where line 42 actually represents another encounter with Sally, and so nothing needs to be done to address that. So that's the version of using an equation to check for a duplicate. Here's another duplicate that does look legitimately like a duplicate. We've got 2 identical records, 2 on the same row. That's really not what we want, so we've used the equation to point it out. All right, next let's go ahead and look at removing the duplicates. The utility to do so is in the Data tab on the ribbon, and the button looks like this. It looks like a column with a red cross across it, and it says Remove Duplicates. When you choose that, it's got some options for you. It's going to ask you, what duplicates do you want to remove? Do you want to remove whenever there's a duplicate in the name column, the age column, or all of the columns? And so that would be the first option you have, is I want to make sure I get rid of any data that has the identical information on both records, or on every column in this table. That would kind of match to the few examples that we saw. So that is one option that you could take, but I'll also share that another way that you could go about this is by just going by the criteria of the 2 columns that you care about. And we talked about in the context of this data, where each record represents an encounter, that if there is a duplicate for the name and the admission date, that would be a meaningful signal of a duplicate. We confirm that by looking at examples down in our data. And so if we're trying to be very direct about applying a specific logic to get rid of these duplicates that we can defend and say how we took the approach, we can say that we removed duplicates for any records that had the same name and date of admission. When I hit OK on that, you get a message here that tells you how many duplicates it found, and in this case it found 4 duplicate values, and it leaves 36 unique duplicates. So we still have our conditional formatting pointing out that we have Sally in here twice, but as we know, it's for 2 different admissions. And we also have this check column that we built with this equation to count to see if we have any values greater than 1, and we can see through the filter that there aren't any. So that's sort of our validation to make sure that the removing duplicates worked out. That's one of the primary tasks needed to clean and prep our data. All right, let's head back and see what's next. From there, we're going to talk about text to columns. So text to columns comes up when data is presented in a format where it's connected or combined, and we'd like to have it separated. Often data is shared in a way that is combined, but with some sort of delimiter, something between the pieces or elements of data that would help us get at the information. A common example would be last name, comma, first name. Excel has some tools to allow us to say, hey, split this up based on that comma. We know on one side of the comma is last name and the other side is first name. That's the type of utility that's available here, and we'll see an example. Steps to do so, it is in the Data tab of the ribbon, and there's a button for text to columns. You choose delimited, and then you choose what the delimiter is. And so I've got an example down here. This is data that I actually had ChatGPT produce for me, and this is the way ChatGPT actually shared it with me. It is a single column, and it's got this delimiter in here. It's a straight up and down bar. It's above the backslash on your keyboard. And so this is something I actually need in 2 separate columns. I've got patient names and I've got patient IDs. So I'm going to select the data that I'm going to do this to. Go to the Data tab in the ribbon, And I'm going to come over and find the button that says text to columns. All right, so it pops up a window with some options. That first option is delimited, and that's what you want to choose. This is delimited data. Next, it asks what the delimiter is. In our case, our delimiter is not listed here. It's not a semicolon or a comma or a space. So we'll choose other and we'll enter it. So I've just entered it. If your eyes are very quick, you would have seen down below that it is showing you visually where it's going to make that split in the data, and that looks exactly like what we are trying to accomplish. So I will hit next and finish. I do want to override any data that was there in that column next to it. And here you go. Now I've got what was one wide, ugly column split into two with patient names on the left and patient IDs on the right. That's one of these little tricky things that may come up, and when you need to do it and you don't know how, it'll drive you crazy, especially because you might not even know exactly what the name of this process is. And so this is called text to columns. All right, we're going to go on to a really neat utility that I'm just going to be flat out honest, I've never used before until I started making these videos. I saw it as an option to present, and I think it's really great. So this is called flash fill, and it's right here in Excel, and quite powerful actually. And so it answers a question I have often needed in a really great way, and I'm thrilled it's here. I'm kind of embarrassed that I had never seen it or found it, but hopefully I can save you guys some of that pain by seeing it early on in your Excel journey. So steps are really straightforward. It's in the data tab. It's called flash fill. It's got a little lightning bolt above the table basically, and this is how it works. I can type into a cell in this table a piece of information I need that is in one of the other columns, even if I'm just trying to get some portion of that column. So you can see this MRN is mixed up. It's got MRN dash and then the number. So in this column where I want to extract that MRN, I have typed out what the number is in this MRN. And so you can see it's hard-coded in there because when you look at that formula bar, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 there as what's in that cell. So here's the really cool utility that it allows. When I hit this flash fill, it interprets what I was doing and chooses to go ahead and do that for all of the rest of the columns, which is really great. It's done a very good job. And so I think this is going to be a really great fit for a solution whenever your data is really structured and you have the same pattern going on over and over. I expect that it'll probably be difficult to operate with things that are not very well organized, but whenever it's possible, this is a huge time saver. So I've just got a couple other examples just to show you the range of capabilities here. I've got this last name Smith entered into the extract last name column here, and I'm referring to this patient name over here. Now, I don't do it in any official way in Excel. I just type in Smith into this column and then hit that flash fill button, and sure enough, it grabbed Johnson, Diaz, and Lee. So it's doing exactly what I was looking for. Let's extract the first name. Did it perfectly. And then here's an example where I've put together information from two separate columns. Like I've got the last name, comma, first name, as it is in the first column, then a semicolon and a space, and then the department that's next to it. All right, I'll hit that flash fill, and there we go. It's done the same thing for each one of those records. Pretty cool. I was glad to bump into it, and hopefully I can save you some time in some sort of manual task that you would be really frustrated not knowing how to do. Types of things I know I've spent a ton of time doing that I could have solved with this. Anyway, let's head back and look at the last item I've got for video 9. It is healthcare data integrity. And in healthcare data integrity, we're going to look at some common ways that your data quality falls apart. Especially in Excel, where things can be manually overridden, this is a major concern. Now, it is also really kind of one of the drawbacks of Excel. It is not suited to do this sort of work in a really robust, large-scale way. However, it does have the ability to manually go and update these things. There's ways to search and try to find it. And so we'll look at a couple of those. So some common issues that do come up are things like typos. And so a typo would be that you've got, say, a department and people are entering it in manually, and they just leave a letter out. So you can see here, this department is almost certainly supposed to be cardiology, but it's missing the Y. And so there's some strategies for this, and one of those is data validation. But let's look at what we've got for options. There's another option here that would be find and replace. So I'm going to actually take this opportunity to recommend a new choice you have in searching for utilities within Excel. Now, I'm familiar with find and replace from other Microsoft tools, but I don't know exactly where to find it in the ribbon or the this solution, this bar up at the top of Excel that allows you to find the different things you can do with that. And now if I searched around, I do expect that I could find it relatively quickly. However, I do want to say that Excel has gotten a lot better at their search within their products. And so I'm going to just show you how searching that term, because I know what it's called, find and replace, searching for that actually can pull it up pretty quickly. So I just put in the word find, and I actually see down here what I'm looking for, which is replace. And so there's an example. You don't have to know exactly how to get to it. Let's say that you had forgotten, like I'd shown you before, the flash fill. If you start typing flash, sure enough, there it is. It's got that as an option. So I just want to promote that. I'd say that Excel's getting far better at that, and I expect, especially with items that you don't use very often, you don't remember where that button is, it's a really, really great solution for searching and trying to find what it is that you need to do. All right, so this is an example where we have found an issue in this name cardiology, and we might have a suspicion that it actually is happening throughout the whole of our data set. Now, this is a small data set. You can see it all visually, but there will be times when you're working in bigger data. And so I'm going to show you an example of the find and replace functionality that you could use to fix any problems like this. So in the find what box, you can type in what it is that you're looking for. That is cardiology without a Y. And then you can, in the next box, put what you want to replace it with. So I'm going to go ahead and say replace. If you were looking quickly, it did find that one there. I'll hit replace all. And actually, because I hit it twice, it found it again, depending on, I'm not sure exactly why that happened, but it put a second Y after it, which is odd. I'm not sure why exactly it did that. But that's the find and replace. I am going to get rid of this because I do want to show you another way that we might kind of zero in on this issue if we didn't see it visually, in a straightforward way. So that's just simply correcting typos. That's a common thing you have to do in Excel because it's manual, because you can overwrite cells. Typos come up, and so you do need to search and find them. There's never a perfect way to do that. Another quick shortcut I'll give you is F7. F7 is how you start a spell check. And so that's one that's just burned into my brain because I'm dyslexic and a terrible speller, and Excel does not do a lot of spell checking automatically. So that would be one way that you can access spell check. I suspect you also can type spelling up here, and sure enough, it comes up as one of the options, and you get to the same result. So I just want to share that as another way to maybe search for these issues if you're not finding them, in this simple way. All right, so let's talk next about dates. Dates are a type of data that can easily be put in multiple different formats, and it's very easy to get wrong information, transposing numbers, not having the date there at all. So in this example, let's go ahead and get that fixed up. Let's just say that we don't know when Mary Johnson got here, and we have somewhere else to go look that up, and then we can find she actually came on the 5th. I'm sorry, I fat fingered that one. 1/5/23. Okay, now we've got a good date there. But if you look below, we have two different types of dates. Now, They're formatted as dates, all of them. I can tell that because up here in this numbers section, I see date across the top, but they're all in different format. So let's go ahead and get that fixed up by using this formatting area and just pick the type of date that we like there. All right, we've got it. And let's talk about another type of issue that comes up in data, and that is missingness. Now, missing data is a real problem that happens all the time to us, where we don't have a full record. We don't have a piece of data on every single row and every single record. Missingness is sort of inevitable in healthcare because we have a lot of human processes, and human processes are very imperfect. So here's in this table, we've got above one cell E20, that has a missing information for cost. There could be a lot of good and legitimate reasons for this, like the patient hasn't been billed yet, our billing process does not input something here till it's complete. It could be that this patient's still in the hospital and so hasn't been charged. All sorts of things that could be causing this. So the number one thing to do about missing data is find the reason why. It's the longest and hardest, and nobody wants to hear that answer. But for sure, the best possible thing you can do about missing data is tracking down the reason. And so for me, that means going to Carlos's chart and figuring out what's going on. Have they been billed? What is the cost? And what happened there? If it's in the chart, then I search through the process of processing of data from that place to figure out where the missing link might be. So I just like to share that as an example. However, there are times that do come up where you have a really large data set and you want to continue to do analysis without getting hung up with missing values. So one choice that is made, although I'd really caution that it's not a really great choice, but I want to share the process just in case you bump into it, would be you can impute or fill in any of your missing values with the data set's average. This is a common choice that's made in order to continue to do modeling and more advanced mathematical techniques with data and ensure that we don't skew the outcome. It should only be done when the missingness is a very, very small proportion of the data, like only a percentage or two, and when it isn't going to terribly skew the outcomes or the thing that you're working on. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how you might do that. Of course, you can go find the information and put in the value if you know it, but in lieu of that, you could actually write out the equation here of equals average of this whole range, and even though that cell is in that range and had a 0, it knows what you're trying to accomplish and will allow you to complete that. So that is an example we have here. I would also say that another way I often do this is I would create another column called cost filled in maybe, and I would do a logical equation together with that average idea, and I would say equals if the value here in cost is blank, then I want to take the average of the cost column. And if not, I just want to return the cost column. All right, I've got something off on I did not close my average calculation there. All right, value of true, value of false, and enter. So what you have in this column is you've got 1500 for the first record because there is a value there. It isn't blank, and so it's just going to return as I've put in the third element of this equation, which asks what to put if it's false or what to put if it's true. Since this is false, this isn't blank, it's just going to give me the cost column. But we see a different answer for the cost filled in on the third record where we did not have a cost because it evaluated this as true. That at cost item or cell E20 did come back as blank, and so it gave me what I've put into this if equation for the value if true, and that value if true that I've chosen is the average of that whole cost column. So two different approaches, same end result. And couple ways to address missing values. A last item I will show in the search for bad data would be to use data validation. So a department may have been entered, but we also may have a predetermined list of departments that should have been entered. And so we can use it, much like we've shown in past videos, to put data validation onto this data set. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that process. I want to do that to this selection of cells, C18 through 21. I'm going to go to the Data tab in the ribbon, and then come on over to this button here, which is Data Validation. The Allow, I'm going to allow a list of values, and I can pick out that list from this predefined department names table I have created. I'm going to hit OK, and right away you see that an error pops up. Now, another option that you have is to circle invalid data. You see that I've made that choice from up here in the ribbon in data validation. You can also clear those circles so it's not showing it. Then you can go and search and say, oh, they put cardiology, they forgot the Y. Let's go ahead and input the right value there. All right, there we go. That is video 9. Can't wait to see you in the next video.